I'm getting married in 2 weeks and I am totally screwed. My fiancée Sarah, 28 female, and me, 34 male, have known each other for about 6 years, engaged for 1. Our wedding is scheduled to take place in just 2 weeks and I just witnessed something that is making me feel like I am making the biggest mistake in my life. Tonight Sarah and I were taking a rare opportunity to relax at home. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner while I was out back working on one of my projects. We live on acreage and I am building a pagoda/fire pit in the backyard that we were planning on using this fall. Anyway, as you do when you're doing heavy labor, I get thirsty and come back to the house to get a drink, where I see Sarah at the counter preparing dinner and talking on speakerphone. I recognize the voice instantly as my brother-in-law Marty. Now, this is where my brain gets totally twisted. Marty asks Sarah where her sister Evelyn is as he's been trying to get in contact with her and she's not answering texts, and I hear Sarah say to him, "She just left here. She should be home in a half hour or so." It should be noted that Evelyn is Marty's wife of 5 years. I have to admit that I didn't immediately register what she had just said, because I went into the kitchen and grabbed a glass and asked Sarah what was that all about? And she responds with Marty was looking for Evie. I see her texting and I ask her what are you doing? And she says I'm texting Evie that Marty was looking for her. Anyway, I pour myself a drink, sit down, have a sip and then finally my brain starts to work. First off, I heard Sarah tell Marty that Evelyn was here. Evelyn was not here and the last time we saw her was yesterday when she came over to work on some last-minute wedding decoration stuff with Sarah. Secondly, why is she texting Evelyn and expecting a response when I distinctly heard Marty that Evelyn wasn't answering her texts? Lastly, why the hell would she tell Marty that Evelyn should be back in 30 minutes unless she either knows where she is, then why did she lie? Or she is, right now in front of me, texting her to tell her to get her butt home quickly. The only conclusion that I came up with is that Sarah is lying to Marty about the whereabouts of her sister, Marty's wife, and is probably warning Evie that Marty will expect her home in half an hour. I then spent probably the next 5 hours concocting various explanations for this behavior, some decent, some downright horrible, and playing them back in my head. I wanted, really badly to ask Sarah about this, but at the same time if what I think is going on, then I doubted I'd get a straight answer. Which brings me to about an hour ago. I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the toilet and I couldn't resist the urge to check Sarah's phone. We both know each other's pins so this wasn't a difficult thing to do. Anyway, I grabbed the phone, retreated to the bathroom and unlocked it and yup, it was exactly what I was afraid of and probably what most of you were expecting. Sarah's sister Evelyn has been having an affair for about 6 months with a coworker and Sarah has been helping Evelyn cover it up for almost that entire time. There are literally hundreds of texts between them discussing it, discussing the coworker, discussing intimate stuff, really embarrassing things about my brother-in-law, and probably uncharitable, just stuff that makes my stomach churn and here is my soon-to-be wife going along with all of it without batting an eye. I took some screenshots of the entire thread, put the phone back where I found it and then retreated to my home office to find myself here typing it all out on Reddit simply so I can avoid the primal scream that wants to come out of my mouth right now. I am totally 100% screwed. Reddit, I cannot marry Sarah, I just cannot do it. I can't think of any reasonable excuse she could offer me about assisting her sister in this affair and victimizing not only Marty, but their 2-year-old daughter as well. On the other hand, myself, my family, Sarah and her family, have all sunk an enormous amount of money into a wedding that is supposed to happen in around 2 weeks. There is no way we are getting any of that money back. On top of that, I feel like an absolute fool, like how did I not know this woman was like this? And what the hell am I going to do? I can't marry her, I absolutely cannot. However, I still want to. She's beautiful and fun and kind and I thought we had a bright future ahead of us. She's never done anything wrong to me, but I just can't see her the same now. It's like a big black stain on an otherwise beautiful picture. I just don't know how in the world I got this so wrong and I'm absolutely dreading doing what I know I need to do. I feel like I want to vomit or break something. What jokes are so dumb they are actually funny? On this farm, there's a cow, a chicken, and a horse, and the 3 of them are best friends. They do just about everything together. And one day, they're sitting at the window of the house, and the farmer's kid is watching MTV, and they're watching it, and they hear the music, and the horse says, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to do that. So the horse calls up Guitar Center, and he says to the guy on the phone, hey, listen. I wanna learn to play guitar. Guy on the phone says no problem. Come on down. No, there might be one problem. I'm a horse. Nah, it ain't a problem. We'll get some attachments. I can teach you to play. Promise. So horse turns out to be a natural. He gets good. And he calls over cow and chicken and he's like look what I can do and he jams out like Jimi Hendrix. And cow says holy shiz. That's awesome. I want to learn to do something like that too. What's like that? And horse says bass. Learn to play bass. So cow calls up Guitar Center. And she says hey, listen, I want to learn to play bass guitar. Guy on the phone says no problem. Miss, come on down. Hey, this might be a problem. I'm a cow. Nah, no problem. I helped a horse recently. I can teach you to play too. Promise. So cow learns to play the bass, and cow is amazing at it. So cow and horse are jamming, and chicken gets a bit jealous. He says damn, I want to learn something too, but not like that. Horse says well, I mean, we need a drummer around here. So chicken calls up Guitar Center, and he says hey, listen, I want to learn to play drums. Guy on the phone says no problem. Man, come on down. Hey, maybe a problem. I'm a chicken. Nah. Ain't no thing. I taught a horse guitar and a cow bass. I can teach you drums. So chicken learns the drums, and he's amazing. So cow, horse, and chicken all start having jam sessions whenever the farmer's out. And one day they're playing, and a big record agent is driving down the road, and he hears them, and he's like, what the fuck? That sounds amazing. So he stops at the farm, and he finds them all playing in the barn, and he says, holy shiz, you guys sound awesome. I want to represent you. Make this a real band, make some music. You're gonna be huge. So Cow and Chicken and Horse take this guy's deal, and they move to the city, they cut albums, and they're big, real big, top 10 hits, platinum albums, the works. They get set for their first tour. But there's a problem. See, Horse gets a phone call, his mom's real sick. Cow and Chicken, though, they're cool as hell. They say, listen, go see your mom. We'll delay the first show a couple of days, so fly back home, spend some time with her, and then jump on a plane and come meet us. Horse says, thanks, guys, you're the best, and he takes off. Couple of days later, Horse's mom is just fine. Turned out to be a real bad cold, she gets over it, and he spends another night there. The following morning, he gets a call. It's his agent. Cow and Chicken's plane went down. They died in the crash. The band is done. He's lost his best friends. And Horse, this breaks him. Man, he's been through so much with them, and he feels real down in the dumps. So he takes a walk, and while he's on that walk, he just can't shake the blue, so he figures to himself, alright, one drink, just to get over it. So Horse walks into the local bar. Bartender looks at him and says, hey, why the long face? What is the dumbest thing you've done to get out of something? In 6th grade, one night I was like, I really don't feel like going to school tomorrow, so I looked up how to get a fever. I tried taking a cold bath, standing under the fan, all the regular getting sick ideas, and nothing seemed to be working. So I did a bunch more searches, then I found a tutorial that said to take a bath at the hottest temperature your bathtub will go, and then stay up all night. I was like, I tried so many things already, why not one more? And decided to try it. I started the water for a steaming hot bath. It stung to get in it, and my skin was getting red and irritated, and now, thinking back, it was definitely way too hot to be in it. Anyway, I don't know how, 6th grade me was determined to skip school, and I somehow survived it for 30 minutes. When I was getting out, I felt dizzy and then I fell on the floor and had a seizure. Yes, a full-on seizure. Then I passed out. I'm not sure for how long. I woke up and saw the blinding ceiling lights of the bathroom, and the first thing I thought was, am I dead? And then I threw up in the toilet next to me and had a migraine for the night. All the skin on my whole body was red and itchy, and hurt to touch, and some parts even had blisters. I was so tired I just went to sleep, and I didn't tell my mom any of this, since I was still very determined to skip school at this point, and it definitely felt like I was getting sick. The second day morning, everything was so much worse, I felt horrible. I got to the point where I felt like I needed actual medical attention, and I had to tell my mom everything that happened. She scolded me and brought me to the hospital, and later found out I got first-degree burns. So long story short, don't do that. But I guess it worked since I didn't have to go to school for the next week. Serious, people who have survived a murder attempt, by dumb luck, what's your story? I, 18 years old back then, now 25, was on my way home at night after meeting a friend. My home was just 10 minutes away from the train station. After a few minutes I felt someone following me. No big deal, I thought, just someone else walking home. But I started walking faster. I realized the person behind me was catching up. Weird. In my head I started to make up scenarios of how to defend myself if the person would attack me. Never would I think of this to actually happen. Well, until I felt something on the back of my head, hitting me hard. I went furious. I turned around and attacked the guy. My mind was just full of anger towards this stranger who, what I thought, hit me. We were wrestling until I fell on the ground. He was sitting on top of me, strangling me. I tried to crawl my nails into his eyes as deep as I could, but I started to black out. Suddenly there was this thought in my head, wake up, or you will die. Well, adrenaline kicked in again and I opened my eyes and screamed at the top of my lungs, attacking him again. That helped. He stood up and began to run. I laid there for a few seconds, then I started to run home, still screaming. My mom was already at our door and opened for me because my screams woke her up, or her mother senses, who knows. She immediately called the cops and they could arrest him on the same night. It turned out that he actually shot me in my head from behind. They assumed that the gun didn't work properly, the bullet didn't penetrate my skull and stuck in there, but as far as I know they never found out why the gun misfired. I'm glad though. He told the cops that he already followed me a few times in the past, but never had the guts to do it. He wanted to kill me and rape my dead body. I know that's a wild story. I have some Swiss newspaper articles as a source if someone cares though. I ran an internet message board for creeps. It was shut down, until I started getting notifications 10 years later. The last conversation I had on the old forum was about 10 years ago. I kept the site up and running all these years for a few reasons. One was to have a place to test stuff, and I ended up using the server as a tool to teach my kids how to use computers properly. You guessed it. I'm a network admin. Skip to present day, and about 4 weeks ago you can imagine my surprise when I get an email informing me that new users are registering accounts on the forum. At first I figured it was some of the old guys coming back for nostalgia. You won't find the site on Google and the URL isn't something you would just guess either, so I logged myself in and went to check out the new thread. The subject line was a series of numbers. I clicked on title to inspect the conversation, but there was only one post, a series of letters and numbers with spaces at random intervals too long to post here. My first thought was that it was a prank, so I checked the admin log for IPs just to see who it was. Turns out my supposedly private forum had received 400 unique hits at the exact time of posting, from IP addresses all over the world. I should have known then that something weird was going on, but I was curious and it felt like a puzzle I was being asked to solve. As I racked my brain over the next few days, I began to research as much cryptography as I could, but whatever code these posts were in wasn't something I could decipher. After about 3 days of searching, another post appeared, in much the same theme, and again there were around 400 unique hits at the time of posting that prevented me from finding the origin. This is when things began to take an even stranger turn. So far, the same user had posted each entry in the thread. A few hours after the second post, 5 other users started leaving messages, all of which were huge entries of letters and numbers. The posts came flying in over a 4-hour period until they just stopped and the server started going insane. CPU and RAM usage began to max out, but the traffic never changed. At that point I had seen enough and pulled the plug on the server, assuming it was being used as a Bitcoin miner, and forgot about the whole thing. The next day I got a text on my work phone, "Turn on the server." I was more than a little shaken, but I didn't do anything straight away as I was at work. A few hours after my lunch break was over, I got a Facebook message from my teenage son, which was unusual, so I checked it straight away. The message was a picture of his face from his laptop webcam along with our home address. If any of you have kids, you can imagine my calm and measured, "Hint, it wasn't," reply. A few minutes later my work phone started ringing with one of the support technicians' caller ID, but when I took the call they weren't on the other end. Instead, to my surprise, it was Stephen Hawking's voice speaking at me over the line. "The forum is being used for great things. Leave work, return to your family and plug the server back in. You have 2 hours." I knew that was a threat. I'm not an idiot, so I didn't take any chances. I raced back home, plugged the server back in and waited for a response. My personal phone buzzed this time with a new text message from my daughter. "Well done. No more interference. We're waking up. We're waking up." What the hell did that mean? I made myself a coffee and tried to log into the server, but I was locked out. Whatever was happening, they had full access to everything we owned, which shouldn't be possible. The more I thought about it, the crazier my theories got, until eventually I realized whatever was happening was way beyond my capacity to deal with. Remember the old college buddies I set the forum up with? Well, one of them works for the NSA and his name is Pete. I figured that if anyone would be willing to help me out with this, it would be him. I mean, I just didn't trust local police to have the know-how, and the FBI doesn't exactly have a call here if you don't think the local police force have the ability to deal with your situation without getting your family killed hotline, you know? I just needed a way to contact him without them realizing what I had done. I knew I was traceable via my phone GPS, so they would know wherever I went with them. I also know my car could be tracked the same way, so I couldn't go anywhere with them, but I also couldn't just leave them at the house or they might get suspicious. I had no idea to what extent they had access to CCTV around the area or the other webcams in the house or at work either, so I had to make everything seem normal, but not too normal. I drove back to work with the phones, my work laptop and a hoodie. When I arrived at the office I sat at my desk, returned my devices to their usual places and got back to work. When I was satisfied a believable amount of time had passed, I began Operation Call for Help. Step 1. I walked at a smooth and completely normal pace down the hallway and to the left, where I entered the conveniently camera-free server room. Step 2. After entering the server room I got changed into the hoodie I brought with me and limped out of the office, hopefully with my head covered and my gait changed they wouldn't recognize me through the outdated Lores Chinese cameras. Step 3. As soon as I got out of the office I limped to the nearest bus station and took a ride to the nearest mall, where my Oscar-winning Dr. House performance would take me to the nearest mobile store. With a piece of paper on which I'd written my friend's phone number I quickly hobbled over to the men's bathroom, picked a stall and made the call. The phone rang. Then it rang again. And then I hit a voicemail. "No worries, hang up and try again." No answer. Shit. Fuck. Shit. It took 12 tries in the mall toilets before I got anywhere, but when I finally got through to him he understandably wasn't very happy. "Who the fuck is this and why have you called me 12 times? I blurted out as much as I could in 30 seconds. I even got as far as the weird code still being posted on the forum. Then the son of a bitch hung up on me. I just sat there for a few seconds, stunned. I didn't know what else to do, so I dialed in 911, but before I could put the call through the burner phone rang. Unknown number. It was Pete. He spoke very quietly down the line and told me he couldn't talk on his personal number, but that I did the right thing by calling him. I quickly picked up the story from where I had left off, leaving out no details. I feel sorry for the guy who sat in the other bathroom stall. He must have thought I was a maniac. After I finished I felt the tone of the conversation change, and then it was my turn to listen as he blurted out a ton of technical questions about the nature of the traffic and forum posts. I told him he could see the posts for himself if he got onto the website, but he quite wisely told me that would be a bad idea. Any unexpected traffic that they spotted would be a dead giveaway I'd told someone what was happening. Then I asked what the hell he thought was happening. How could they even have found our old forum, let alone have the resources to infiltrate my life like this? He tried to bypass the question, but I kept pressing him. I figured my kids were in danger and I had a right to know who the hell these people were, but he refused to answer and told me to head home. I refused to cooperate until I knew who was threatening my family. He said it's not a matter who, it's a matter of what. That's all you want to know, for your safety and mine. Agents will be at your house in a few hours, your family home, and we'll take it from there. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm a glorified network guy whose computer was probably hacked by well-informed Chinese kids somewhere. Now my family is being questioned by federal agents? And who or what the hell are these people, and why is the federal government getting involved so quickly? 2 hours later there was a knock at the door. Outside was a white guy in a crisp blue suit and tie. To his right was a black guy in a tan get-up. Both were easily 6,5 and had little American flag pins on their collar. I realized then I had walked into an episode of Homeland. The two introduced themselves as NSA agents, but I don't recall their names. I asked for ID and they presented their cards. I even made a note of taking down their agent numbers for my own records. After we'd exchanged pleasantries and I made sure everyone was on the way home to talk to the two men, I went into the kitchen to make coffee. When I came back into the living room, the agents had already begun tearing the place apart. They took every device they could get their hands on, our laptops, home PCs, even our smart TV, and managed to stuff them all into the back of their car. It felt more like a robbery than police work. When they had finished, they returned to the house and sat with me in the living room. They asked me a lot of personal questions about who my family were and how long it would take them to arrive. More than anything, it made me feel like they were more concerned about getting us all in the same room than helping us. The low buzz of their phones put an end to the barrage of questions. Simultaneously, they pulled the devices out of their pockets and exchanged an exasperated look with one another before thanking me for my time and rushing out of the door, taking thousands of dollars of my equipment and personal items with them. 10 minutes later, there was another knock at the door. Pretty shaken by this strange intrusion, I didn't answer the door at first, but after a second more intense knock, I opened the door. In front of me were two men and a woman, average height, nothing notable other than the badges in their hands. Our exchange went something like this. "Sir, Pete informed us of the situation. If it's okay with you, we'd like to begin. Didn't you guys just send some people? I'm sorry, sir. But what about the other two who just left? I have their badge numbers written down here." The agents at the door looked pale as I explained what had happened. Then I went pale as they explained that those two men hadn't been sent by the federal government. They left soon after they realized everything of value had been taken, but assured me they'd be working the case in the meantime. I haven't heard anything back from them since. I'd been trying to get in touch with my buddy for weeks about what the hell had happened and whether I was safe, but he never picked up, and eventually the number was disconnected. I even made the drive to his house, but when I got there it was for sale and him and his family were gone. I thought this nightmare was over, but last week I was followed on my way to work. I think my family may be in danger, so since then I have finished building a new server. I'm going to put the forum back up and see what happens. So far all know is that there is something or someone out there using computer resources that has the intelligence to outsmart the NSA and the FBI. What worries me most is that no one I've spoken to has any idea exactly what it's up to. I've put my story out here in the hopes that I'll be able to give an update when this is all over. But if I don't, then I hope someone out there finds this and it helps them. Be careful out there on the web. What was the greatest mistake of your life? It cost me an entire year of my life. If I hadn't gotten a second chance, I wouldn't still be alive. It was a hot and humid summer day in Manhattan. I was making my way through the park, on the way to grab lunch with some of my coworkers. That's when I saw her. She was breathtaking. She was sitting on the park bench, reading. She looked up at me as I walked by, and then looked back down at the book. It was odd, she seemed sort of familiar to me. I continued on, but about 10 seconds after passing her, I realized that I did know her. She knew my friend Jack from college, and we had met briefly at a party a few years back. As I turned around to take another look and confirm, I caught her in the middle of her own double take. I decided that lunch could wait, and made a complete 180 and walked right back over to her. "Maria, right? Yes, you're Kevin, Jack's friend. I knew you seemed familiar. I guess I couldn't recognize you in that suit," she replied, setting down her book. "What are you doing now that we graduated?" "Must be something in business, based on the suit." Proudly, I told her, "Investment banking. It's only my second week, but it is very exciting. How about you?" "Ooh, so you've sold your soul." "Just kidding, but I have heard those hours are rough. As for me, I'm a photographer. It's always been my passion, and now it's my job, and I love it," she said, and then she looked me in the face and cracked a smile. Her smile was white in her golden brown face, and her eyes had the same color as her skin. She really was beautiful. I could feel my throat start to swell a bit, and my heart was beating faster. I looked at my watch, and saw that I was tight on time. I very much wanted to see more of Maria, but I also knew that she was right, and that I would have very demanding hours. In my mind, at the time, I didn't have time to take any interest in women, so no point in asking for her number. Even now, I cringe at how foolish and short-sighted I was. So we said our goodbyes, and I went to lunch with my coworkers. Over the next few months, I became more and more disillusioned with my job. Now that I was there, in the office, the work just wasn't as interesting as I imagined it would be. It was mostly making insignificant edits on PowerPoints at the whim of my more senior colleagues. And the hours were long. It felt like I wasn't even living anymore, just working. Often, as I would lay in bed before I went to sleep, I would think about Maria. Why hadn't I just asked for her number? What was I afraid of? I imagined if they wrote a book about me, that it would be perhaps the most boring book ever written. I'd much rather read a book about the man who had asked for Maria's number, maybe even asked her out on a date right then and there in the park. But that was in the past, and there was no way to find her again now. One day, I was in the office, and it just became too much. I overheard a senior colleague talking about his divorce, and then another discussing how he hadn't seen his kids in over a week. They had a laugh, and got back to work. I was sick to my stomach. Was that the life I was working for? I told my associate that I was heading out to grab some lunch. He seemed a bit annoyed that I would leave the office rather than order in, but I didn't really care. I walked outside, and went to the park and sat on the bench, the same one Maria was sitting in that summer day. I looked out at the park, and thought to myself, an entire year has passed, and you don't have anything to show for it. Nothing in your life has really changed. Your only new memories are from work, and those all sort of blend into one. It was at that moment I saw her. She was breathtaking. It was Maria. I waved to get her attention, and she saw me and walked over. "Hey, long time no see, Mr. Banker. How are you? If I'm being honest, you look a bit down today." I smiled, and said, "Just a bad day at work." "Where are you headed?" "To a shoot. I have a bit of time to catch up though, I'm in no rush." We caught up and I learned all about what she had done that year. She had traveled to Europe and to Asia, met new people and saw new things. And to top it all off, she had the most beautiful pictures she had taken to document all of it. When she asked me what I had done, I told her the truth. The last year of my life had been one long bad day at work. Before she left, I asked her, "Maria, are you seeing anyone at the moment?" "Well, with all my traveling, I haven't really had much time to do any dating." "Well, would you like to grab coffee with me sometime?" "Sure, I'd love to." We exchanged numbers, and then she walked off to her shoot. I walked back to work, but this time I was smiling from ear to ear. When I got back, my associate asked, "What's got you in such a good mood?" I replied, "Oh, nothing, just a girl." He chuckled and said, "That feeling will wear off soon, trust me." It didn't. Coffee became dinner, dinner turned to dating, dating turned to engaged, and soon enough, we were married. I still feel the same way about Maria, who is now my wife. It was like my life was a black and white movie, and as soon as she was in it, it was full of color. She even made my job feel better, as now my work had a purpose, to build a better life for the two of us. Eventually I got a job that didn't pay as well but gave me much more time to spend with her, and now we've been married for 6 years, and she is pregnant with our first kid, a son. My advice to all of you is to be bold. Go talk to her, or him, or do the thing that makes your life feel full of color. Don't live a life you'll regret. What's the scariest story you know that is 100% true? This is an incident that happened to me about 10 years ago. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I was driving home from work one night around 9 p.m. midweek, so the roads were quiet. As I was driving downhill, I heard a sound that was like a jet engine roaring behind me. The next thing I know, a car goes flying past me going twice the speed limit. It looked like a fairly old crappy car. The car started to get the speed wobbles, and then one of the tires came flying off and rolled at speeds downhill whilst the car spun out and crashed. I stopped my car to make sure whoever inside was okay. A guy got out of the car and looked over at me, then started moving extremely quickly towards me. I don't know why, but I hit my internal locks on the car, which was fortunate because no more than 2 seconds later the guy started grabbing at the driver's side door and smashing on my windscreen with his fists trying to get in. He'll never forget the crazy look he had in his eyes. I put my foot down on the accelerator and drove off back home. I decided to swap cars once I got home and drove back to see what was going on. I saw 2 fire trucks and about 4 police close to where the incident happened. When I got back to the crash site, the guy was no longer there, so I decided to head home. The next day at work, I was online bored reading the news when I saw an article that shocked me. The article was about a guy who had been in a police chase for 1 hour and the police stopped chasing him because it was becoming too dangerous. Turns out the guy was high on meth, had stolen a car an hour's drive away, and had been in a hot pursuit since. After crashing the car, the guy apparently crossed to the other side of the road and hailed the first car that appeared, which was a taxi. He got into the taxi and stole it. In the process, he pushed the driver out of the driver's side door and the driver got stuck and dragged at speeds. The driver died from the incident. I called the police and had a detective assigned to me. He fingerprint checked my car and got a statement. I had to testify in the Supreme Court as a key witness in a murder trial. The guy got 30 years and they told me that my testimony was one of the main factors in convicting him. I often think back to that night and wonder if I hadn't locked my doors, would I have been the one who got murdered. My boyfriend turns me on before exams so that he'll score higher, but I got revenge. When I was in high school, I was the stereotypical smart one. However, despite getting multiple offers from super prestigious colleges, I decided to go to my state school with my boyfriend BK so that we could stay close together. It's been 2 years since I did that, and I've never regretted my decision, except now, maybe. Basically, BK isn't necessarily academically gifted or anything, but he takes a special pleasure in scoring higher than me. However, in general, he can't do that unless he does something sneaky. Lately, his special move has been to start making out with me and go super far, only to pull back at the last second, right before an exam. He does this mainly because he knows that I perform better on tests if I'm sexually satisfied, so he thought that the opposite might, well, result in the opposite. Unfortunately for me, he was right. On my midterms, I couldn't think at all and got super mediocre marks. BK's grades are usually equally mediocre, but he was able to focus through the extra credit enough to still get slightly better grades than me. Now, logically, I know that BK will stop if I ask him to because, at the end of the day, we love and care for each other. However, I'm also too proud for my own good, and even though my grades were somewhat on the line, I refused to back down when this was an obvious game. So, I decided that I would get my revenge on BK in a different way, and, when finals came around, I enlisted BK's best friend Lulu to help. If BK has 2 brain cells and I have 4, then Lulu is a human bodhisattva with 1,000 brain cell palms who, despite getting atrocious grades, is the single best prankster I know. So, I asked her how she could help me get revenge on BK, and, like always, she delivered. Go to part 2. What is something that makes you the most happy? I'm so happy that my ex-wife is miserable. Found out my wife was having an affair. She met a guy at work and came home one day telling me she was in love with him, no longer loved me, and wanted a divorce. This was a guy she'd only known for 3 months. At the time, she and I had been together since we were in our 20s. We have 3 kids. Well, I tried to fight for my marriage and didn't want a divorce, but she simply would not stop seeing this guy. After one weekend where she disappeared from Friday afternoon to Sunday night, I ended up throwing her out of the house. She immediately moved in with this guy. The only excuse she ever gave me was, "I never wanted to hurt you, but there's just something about this guy, and I deserve to be happy." That was it. That was the depth of her reasoning for throwing everything we built together away. We ended up finalizing our divorce in early 2022. Although I had very hard feelings toward her, I faked it enough to get pretty favorable divorce terms from her. It seemed she was so eager to be with her dream man that she didn't have time for a long divorce. So in the end, I got to keep my pension in the house, which I had bought from my grandmother. I did have to give her half of my 401k. However, the effect on our kids was pretty devastating. All three of them took it very hard. My oldest son told her that if she chose this man, he'd never have a relationship with her again. As of right now, neither of our sons has a relationship with their mother. Our daughter does talk to her from time to time, but their relationship is very strained to say the least. My daughter is a very kind person and she tries, but she usually ends her conversations with her mother even more upset than when they started. About 4 months after the divorce, my ex contacted me out of the blue. She told me she had made a terrible mistake and asked if she could come home. Her dream man turned out to be an alcoholic who she says is verbally abusive and wasted all of her money. I used this opportunity to tell her exactly what I thought of her as a person, a wife and a mother. I told her this was her life now and to deal with it. I told her she no longer had a home at this house and to never contact me again. Then a few things happened over the last year that have driven her to start trying to contact me again. First off, I met someone. My sister introduced me to a friend of hers who is also divorced, and she and I hit it off. We've been seeing each other since last summer, and while we've agreed that neither of us wants to get married again, we are together. Once my ex heard about this, she once again tried to contact me, but I ignored her. My son also got married and didn't invite his mother. She again contacted me to try to get me to intervene on her behalf. I told her I would talk to him, but I never did. Secretly, I feel like she deserves all the pain she's feeling when it comes to our kids. She destroyed our family without so much as an afterthought. Too bad. So sad. Now, she recently told our daughter that she finally broke it off with a dream man because she could take his drinking and total lack of responsibility. He wasted her half of the 401k that I had to give her. He also totaled her car driving drunk. This from a man in his 40s. Again, she knew this guy for 3 months and torpedoed our whole family for him. On the face of it, I act like I feel sorry for her, but inside, I really delight in the fact that she's so unhappy. Call me evil or whatever, I don't care. She brought this on herself, and it serves her right. I actually had to sit there one Saturday night while she got ready for a date with this guy and laughed on the phone with her friend about how awkward our living situation was. I lived in hell for over a year because of her. Wait until she finds out our son and his wife are going to have a baby later this year. Maybe if she had been able to keep her legs closed, she'd get to meet her grandchild. Enjoy your shitty one-bedroom apartment and your broken-down used car. Me and my new partner will think of you when we're on vacation in Hawaii this summer. Hawaii was the trip my ex and I always planned to take once our daughter finished college. Maybe I'll send her pictures.
My friends tricked me into breaking up with my soulmate. Now I want to reconnect with him. I have known Bo since we were both 11 years old. We both grew up in a small town, and our families were neighbors, so we became very close friends. We were the next-door neighbor best friends that started dating in our junior year of high school. He took me to prom and we both picked a college that was in state with both of our majors available. Everyone expected us to get married when we went off to college. Bo had issues at first making new friends, but I sort of jived with the gals in class. My new friends didn't think much of Bo. They kept telling me I could do better than him. They thought Bo was slow-witted and too religious. They said Bo would just pull me back down to our small town, anchor me with children, and we'd both be stuck as hicks. It reached the boiling point on my 21st birthday. 2 of my girlfriends came to me claiming they saw Bo cheating on me. They kept to their stories and I foolishly believed them. I confronted Bo and started screaming at him. Bo didn't apologize, he didn't beg, and he didn't plead. Instead, he got cold and mad. He said that he never trusted my friends, that they were playing me, and he thought I was better than this. I didn't believe him and I let him walk away. He promised that if I took their word without even looking at them critically, we were over. And he kept his word. From that day, he wouldn't even look at me. He wouldn't talk to me, he wouldn't acknowledge I existed. For the rest of college, he never dated anyone. He just worked, went to class, and graduated early. My friends set me up on a ton of dates. I had a bit of a wild college ride, something I'm a bit ashamed of now. Once I graduated, I tried to get established in life, but my college friends kept just wanting to hang out, chill, or party. It honestly got tiring, and I couldn't believe I had the energy to do this for nearly 4 years while getting an education. It was when I was 23 that one of the girls called me a stick in the mud and said something along the lines of "I can't believe we went through the effort of breaking you up with Bo if you were just going to become a wallflower." I couldn't believe it. She went into detail about how easy it was and I felt disgusted. I didn't give Bo another thought after the breakup. I thought he was a cheater, and I told my family, who told his family, and it strained his relationship with his mom for many years. But after that point, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I told my family the truth about what happened with Bo. This apparently helped repair the relationship Bo had with his mother. Bo's mom liked me quite a bit and she went out of her way to sabotage Bo's relationships with any girl he brought home. My mom said Bo's mom did it very discreetly, but after finding out the truth, Bo's mom came clean and Bo nearly cut her out of his life. She apparently begged and pleaded, and was able to work from there. I have many unfinished drafts of emails to Bo, some saying I wish to catch up, others begging for forgiveness and pleading for him to come back to me. But any news I got on Bo after the blow-up with his mom has been sparse. Bo doesn't do social media, and I had no idea where he lived. I found out recently that Bo has been married for 3 years and has a 2-year-old son. He has moved back to our hometown and I saw him at the grocery store when I went to visit my parents 2 weeks ago. He didn't see me, or at least I think he didn't. But, there he was with his wife and child and I instantly felt a swirl of emotions. Jealousy, rage, regret, depression. Even now seeing him with his full family, I still want to beg him for a chance, which makes me feel awful. But at the same time, I feel like I should at least say my piece. I talked to my mom about it, and all she said was the chickens come home to roost. Don't make trouble for Bo. I just know that if I can't talk to Bo one last time, I will regret it for the rest of my life. So I emailed Bo last night. Hi Bo, it's me, Amy. I know it's been years since we talked, and I wanted to apologize for how we broke up. I also want to apologize for how it spread back to our families. I know now that Tracy and Stephanie were hellbent on breaking us up any way they could, and I can't begin to apologize for the hurt it has caused you. I'll be back in town in a few weeks and was wondering if we could have a coffee and catch up. I want to know what's been going on with you in your life. This morning I got a reply from Bo. Amy, I want you to know that I have forgiven you years ago. I hope you are doing well, but I would have to say no to coffee or catching up. My wife and I have a strict rule that neither of us hang out with exes. I hope you understand. I tried emailing him to say he could for sure bring his wife with him, but he's not replied since. I guess my mom was right, there was no chance to reconnect.
Those who had a wedding cancelled at the last second, what was your reason for doing so? She broke me, so I ruined her entire life. It all started about 10 years ago. I was happily engaged to a girl, Nancy, who I knew for about 9 years, but had only been dating for about 1 year. All was good. She had her dream engagement ring, we had a nice house together, both had steady jobs and the wedding plans were coming along nicely. About 2 months prior to the wedding, we found out we were going to have a baby. Such happiness had never been felt before. Wedding plans continued and the big day was only 28 days away. Then I come home from work and find that Nancy isn't home. I call her to see if she got held up at work and to see what time she might be home. But Nancy wasn't at work, she was at her grandmother's house in another state. Nancy calmly told me that she no longer wanted to get married and that she was not coming home. Complete and utter shock. What in the duck just happened? I try to call her back. Her phone is off. I call her grandmother. No answer. What about the wedding? What about our baby? What about everything? No answer. No contact for 3 days. 3 days of no breath in my body, no clues, nothing. On day 4, Nancy shows up and starts packing her stuff. She won't say a word to me, nothing. She leaves and sends me an email saying that she can't be with me, again, no reason. I begin calling her sister and asking what the duck happened. Her sister tells me that she has no idea, but gives me their mom's phone number. Strange, Nancy said her mom was out of the picture because she was abusive when she drank. Nevertheless, I call mom. Mom tells me that I'm lucky number 3 who has fallen for this trap. Nancy cut mom out of her life so mom couldn't ruin Nancy's game of milking guys for money and resources. Nancy has been pregnant twice before and had miscarriages. She milked guys for everything she could before running off to super Christian grandma's house and claiming abuse so grandma will take her in until the dust settles and she can do it again. What the duck? Weeks go by and still no contact with Nancy. I've lost 20 pounds and have been counseled at my job for poor work performance. My family is mad as duck. Family members lost money on travel plans to the wedding, and I'm mortified. I lost all of the deposits on everything for the wedding since it was less than 30 days before it was cancelled. I'm piss broke. I check our joint bank account, negative $2,000. Duck. Guess I won't be paying the mortgage. I start to get it together and my sadness turns to rage. I had so much anger inside of me, I actually had to scale it back a bit, or I might have gone to prison. A month and a half after the split, I get a text. I had a miscarriage. You stressed me out too much, and my daughter is dead now. Daughter? I was having a daughter? You're blaming me for this? That's it. I'm going to unalive this witch. No wait. Take this witch apart at the seams. A few days of drinking get me over the hump of sadness again. Back to rage. Let's do this. Most of Nancy's stuff was still at my house. I start to pack it all up in order to get rid of it somehow. But I stumble upon a few things. Her resume and her checkbook to her personal bank account. I read her resume. It's all BS like everything else. I hop on the computer, create a new Yahoo email address and send a long letter to her corporate office, telling them line by line how it's all lies. Feels good. Next was Operation Checkbook. I sign her name on every check and rip them all out of the book. I drive 30 minutes to the sketchiest part of town and leave them on a sidewalk in front of an AM/PM. Too much good stuff. I go back home and throw out all of her stuff. Screw it. Sue me witch. Except her laptop. I keep that shot. 2 weeks go by. Nancy calls. I don't answer. Voicemail says she got laid off due to cutbacks. I know that's not true. Duck yeah. 2 more weeks go by and letters from some district attorney's bad check restitution program begin to trickle in the mail. Duck yeah. Oh, and the registration renewal for her car. Shred all that shot. Oh, while I'm at it, I might as well put a change of address in for her at the post office. Where to? The temporary shelter for the homeless sounds good. I hear through a mutual friend that since Nancy is out of work now, she's staying with friends and supported financially by super Christian grandma. Duck that. I hop on her laptop and make a new Yahoo email address that is only one number different from Nancy's real email. I email Super Christian Grandma a video of Nancy pleasing herself that I had saved. I titled the email, "Hey Grandma, check out this video I took of my job, I hope I uploaded it right. Duck ya." Email reply, "You are disgusting. I hope your new job pays well because I'm not supporting you if you act like that. Oh damn. 2-for-1 deal. Embarrassment and financial distress. Noise. Weeks go by and I get a call from Rent-A-Center. WTF? Oh, they want all of Nancy's furniture back. I had no idea it was rent-to-own stuff. I tell them I don't have it. They argue and say she says I have it. I stick to my guns and tell them I do not have it, and I don't know where it is. That night, I burned it all in the yard. $4,200 owed. Then I find out that Nancy has a new job, and as I'm planning my next move, I hear great news. Nancy has been arrested and is in jail for embezzlement. Apparently she had some money problems and stole $5,000 out of petty cash and got busted. Oh God, this is great. She ducked herself. Months go by with no updates, and then I hear from a friend that she was bailed out of jail by Grandma after only a few days and ended up taking a plea bargain for a felony conviction and 3 years of probation along with restitution. I hang my hat and call it a day. I have gotten my revenge. I'll leave it there. Time to move on. A couple months later, the phone rings. It's a repo company looking for info on where Nancy is because they're trying to repossess her car. Okay, one last nail in the coffin. I make a few calls and find the address where she's staying. I call the repo company back and give them the info. They thank me and say I'm eligible for a $100 reward if they get the car back. No, thanks. This one's on me. Nancy is now a felon, jobless, and a single mom of a kid she recently had from some random guy. She lives in an apartment with her brother and his girlfriend. I'm happily married with a beautiful daughter and a great life. Yesterday I got a Facebook message from Nancy. Congrats on the marriage and daughter. I'm glad you're happy. I replied, go duck yourself. She blocked me. Life is good. Sometimes taking the low road heals the soul. My dad left me a strange box of envelopes before he passed. It changed my life. Death is always a surprise. No one expects it. Not even terminal patients think they're going to die in a day or two. In a week, maybe. It was no different with my father. In fact, his death was even more unexpected. He was gone at age 27. The same age that claimed the lives of several famous musicians. He was young. Way too young. Cancer doesn't choose its victims. He was gone when I was young, and I learned what a funeral was because of him. I was 8.5, old enough to miss him for a lifetime. My mother picked me up at school and we went to the hospital. The doctor told the news with all the sensitivity that doctors lose over the years. My mother cried. She did have a tiny bit of hope. As I said before, everyone does. I felt the blow. What does it mean? Wasn't it just a regular disease, the kind of disease doctors heal with a shot? I hated you, Dad. I felt betrayed. I screamed with anger in the hospital, until I realized my father was not around to ground me. I cried. With a shoebox under her arm, a nurse came by to comfort me. The box was full of sealed envelopes, with sentences where the address should be. I couldn't understand exactly what was going on. The nurse then handed me a letter. The only letter that was out of the box. Your dad asked me to give you this letter. He spent the whole week writing these, and he wants you to read it. Be strong. The nurse said, holding me. The envelope read when I'm gone. I opened it. Son, if you're reading this, I'm dead. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to die. I didn't want to tell you what was going to happen, I didn't want to see you crying. Well, it looks like I've made it. I think that a man who's about to die has the right to act a little bit selfish. Well, as you can see, I still have a lot to teach you. After all, you don't know crap about anything. So I wrote these letters for you. You must not open them before the right moment, okay? This is our deal. I love you. Take care of your mom. You're the man of the house now. Love, Dad. P.S. I didn't write letters to your mom. She's got my car. He made me stop crying with his bad handwriting. Printing was not easy back then. His ugly writing, which I barely understood, made me feel calm. It made me smile. That's how my father did things. Like the joke before the grounding. That box became the most important thing in the world for me. I told my mother not to open it. Those letters were mine and no one else could read them. I knew all the life moments written on the envelopes by heart. But it took a while for these moments to happen. And I forgot about it. 7 years later, after we moved to a new place, I had no idea where I put the box. I couldn't remember it. And when we don't remember something, we usually don't care about it. If something goes lost in your memory, it doesn't mean you lost it. It simply doesn't exist anymore. It's like change in the pockets of your trousers. And so it happened. My teenage years and my mother's new boyfriend triggered what my father had anticipated a long time before. My mother had several boyfriends, and I always understood it. She never married again. I don't know why, but I like to believe that my father has been the love of her life. This boyfriend, however, was worthless. I thought she was humiliating herself by dating him. He had no respect for her. She deserved something a lot better than a guy she met at a bar. I still remember the slap she gave me after I pronounced the word bar. I'll admit that I deserved it. I learned that over the years. At the time, when my skin was still burning from the slap, I remembered the box and the letters. I remembered a specific letter, which read, when you have the worst fight ever with your mom. I ransacked my bedroom looking for it, which earned me another slap in the face. I found the box inside a suitcase lying on top of the wardrobe. The limbo. I looked through the letters, and realized that I had forgotten to open when you have your first kiss. I hated myself for doing that, and I decided that would be the next letter I'd open. When you lose your virginity came right next in the pack, a letter I was hoping to open really soon. Eventually I found what I was looking for. Now apologize to her. I don't know why you're fighting and I don't know who's right. But I know your mother. So a humble apology is the best way to get over this. I'm talking about a down on your knees apology. She's your mother, kid. She loves you more than anything in this world. Do you know that she went through natural birth because someone told her that it would be the best for you? Have you ever seen a woman giving birth? Do you need a bigger proof of love than that? Apologize. She'll forgive you. Love, Dad. My father was not a great writer, he was just a bank clerk. But his words had a great impact on me. They were words that carried more wisdom than all of my 15 years of age at the time. I rushed to my mother's room and opened the door. I was crying when she turned her head to look me in the eyes. She was also crying. I don't remember what she yelled at me. Probably something like, "What do you want?" What I do remember is that I walked towards her holding the letter my father wrote. I held her in my arms, while my hands crumpled the old paper. She hugged me, and we both stood in silence. My father's letter made her laugh a few minutes later. We made peace and talked a little about him. She told me about some of his most eccentric habits, such as eating salami with strawberries. Somehow, I felt he was sitting right next to us. Me, my mother and a piece of my father, a piece he left for us, on a piece of paper. It felt good. It didn't take long before I read when you lose your virginity. Congratulations, son. Don't worry, it gets better with time. It always sucks the first time. Mine happened with an ugly woman, who was also a street worker. My biggest fear is that you'd ask your mother what virginity is after reading what's on the letter. Or even worse, reading what I just wrote without knowing what wanking off is. You know what it is, right? But that's none of my business. Love, Dad. My father followed me through my entire life. He was with me, even though he was not near me. His words did what no one else could. They gave me strength to overcome countless challenging moments in my life. He would always find a way to put a smile on my face when things looked grim, or clear my mind during those angry moments. When you get married made me feel very emotional. But not so much as when you become a father. Now you'll understand what real love is, son. You'll realize how much you love her, but real love is something you'll feel for this little thing over there. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl. I'm just a corpse, I'm not a fortune teller. Have fun. It's a great thing. Time is gonna fly now, so make sure you'll be around. Never miss a moment, they never come back. Change diapers, bathe the baby, be a role model to this child. I think you have what it takes to be an amazing father, just like me. The most painful letter I read in my entire life was also the shortest letter my father wrote. While he wrote those 4 words, I believe he suffered just as much as I did living through that moment. It took a while, but eventually I had to open when your mother is gone. She is mine now. A joke. A sad clown hiding his sadness with a smile on his makeup. It was the only letter that didn't make me smile, but I could see the reason. I always kept the deal I had made with my father. I never read letters before their time. With the exception of when you realize you're gay. Since I never thought I'd have to open this one, I decided to read it. It was one of the funniest letters, by the way. What can I say? I'm glad I'm dead. Now, all joking aside, being half dead made me realize that we care too much about things that don't matter much. Do you think that changes anything, son? Don't be silly. Be happy. I would always wait for the next moment, the next letter. The next lesson my father would teach me. It's amazing what a 27-year-old man can teach to an 85-year-old senior like me. Now that I am lying on a hospital bed, with tubes in my nose and my throat, thanks to this damn cancer, I run my fingers on the faded paper of the only letter I didn't open. The sentence "when your time comes" is barely visible on the envelope. I don't want to open it. I'm scared. I don't want to believe that my time is near. It's a matter of hope, you know? No one believes they're gonna die. I take a deep breath, opening the envelope. Hello, son. I hope you're an old man now. You know, this letter was the easiest to write, and the first I wrote. It was the letter that set me free from the pain of losing you. I think your mind becomes clearer when you're this close to the end. It's easier to talk about it. In my last days here I thought about the life I had. I had a brief life, but a very happy one. I was your father and the husband of your mother. What else could I ask for? It gave me peace of mind. Now you do the same. My advice for you, you don't have to be afraid. P.S. I miss you. What is something you know because of your profession, which will make everyone's lives easier? Americans, if you need help navigating a complicated government problem, like taxes or a DMV problem, etc., call your representative at the local, state, or federal level. There are staff members standing by whose purpose is to perform constituent services. Many people think that their elected officials just sit up in the Capitol and don't realize they have Capitol and district staff whose whole purpose is to help people navigate through government problems. When I turned 18, I received a letter from the Social Security Administration that told me I owed $52,000 to Social Security because they had determined that my father was not disabled for the last 2 years of his life and they had overpaid him. He spent the last 2 years of his life in the hospital and about 6 months in a coma, and he was apparently not disabled. I spent months trying to solve the problem on my own and was simply jerked around and treated like a criminal by Social Security. Finally, I got the idea to call my congressman and ask for help. Within a few weeks, I ended up getting an apology letter from the Social Security Administration saying they were wrong and I shouldn't have to pay for their mistake. That letter is in my baby book now. My dead grandpa just unfriended me on Facebook. My grandpa has been dead for about 10 years, but before he died he made a Facebook account. I never unfriended him, because it felt like I still had a connection with him as long as I could go back and read our old conversations. Well, a few weeks ago I noticed my friends count had gone down by 2. I never had many Facebook friends, so I knew it had to be 2 of my close friends or relatives who unfriended me. Eventually I realized it had to be Grandpa and Grandma. I thought maybe Facebook had closed Grandpa's account because he had been dead for so long, but that didn't explain Grandma. Also, I could still find both of them by searching for their names. I don't know why, but I tried adding both of them again. Almost immediately, the option to add Grandpa returned, so I know my request was ignored. The request to add Grandma remained pending for a few hours, but eventually that one was ignored too. All this is a little besides the point, and more detailed than you probably care about, but I need to tell someone, because it's all still really strange to me, and I wanted to tell the whole story. My grandmother is still alive. I don't visit her as often as I should, maybe a few times a year. She is not very tech savvy, but she's on Facebook once or twice a month, and after a few hours of painstakingly guiding her through online banking, she's even managed to start paying her bills online. But other than that, Facebook is about the most complicated computer thing she can handle. I asked my mother, and she checked her own account. She had been unfriended as well. She about had a small meltdown when she called Grandma and she didn't pick up. I live pretty close to my mother, so she came and picked me up, and we drove to Grandmother's house. It's only an hour away. Really, there is no excuse for visiting her as seldom as we do. Grandma was home, and she was happy to see us. When my mother demanded to know why she hadn't picked up the phone, she said she had been to Grandpa's grave. She didn't seem to think Mother had any reason to be upset, but she invited us in and asked if we wanted to stay for dinner or coffee. We decided to remain for a few hours. As I said, we really should have visited her more often, and every time we visit it's clear Grandma likes having us. We feel guilty about it when we're there for once, but life moves pretty quickly, and there's always something else we need to do. My grandma has an old piano. I'm not very musically inclined, but it's very nostalgic for me to hear Mother and Grandma play on that piano. Which they did, as they always do when we visit. It felt good. It felt normal. So I told myself she had probably just had an old person moment and logged into Grandpa's account for some reason. But I was still curious, so I did ask her during dinner. She looked embarrassed, but she said she just did not feel like using Facebook anymore, so she had tried to close her account. We said the accounts were still open though, but she waved it away. We finished dinner and helped her with a few things around the house. She was happy to have us there, and again, everything felt normal. Eventually we went home. A few weeks passed. I and Mom both called Grandma once or twice, and everything still seemed normal. But late one night last week I decided to look my grandparents up on Facebook again. The profile pictures had changed. Grandma used to change hers every now and then, and the new ones didn't look unusual, but Grandma said she stopped using Facebook. And there was no reason at all for Grandpa's account to have a new picture. I brought it up with Mother the next day, and she had that same feeling as I did that. Something was off. We went to visit Grandma again yesterday. She was glad to see us like always. In fact, she seemed happier than she had been in a long time. We asked her about Facebook again, and she said she hadn't been on it. When we mentioned the profile pictures changing, she said maybe she'd been on there once or twice. She didn't want to talk about it, so we let it drop. We helped her with a few chores around the house again, but this time my curiosity was stronger, so I made sure I had an excuse to go into her bedroom while she was in the kitchen with Mother, and I turned on her computer. I know all her passwords, because she never changes them, and she has them all written down on a little note next to her laptop. It was a cheap piece of crap the day we bought it for her half a decade ago, but she only uses it for very basic things like writing about her childhood. She lives out in the middle of nowhere, and she grew up in a retirement home in the 1930s, so she knows more about the area and people who used to live there than pretty much anyone. But she had a Tor browser. She's not stupid, my grandma, but she's always been very, very bad at computering, like a lot of old people. So this surprised me. Even my parents probably don't even know what Tor browsers are used for, so my grandma definitely shouldn't. Hell, I don't even know that much. Only time I ever used one was when I was looking into the darknet back in the day, and that was a very brief and shallow visit. I clicked on Tor, and it opened up to a normal search engine. No bookmarks, no browsing history, nothing. Considering she was in the habit of writing all her account names and passwords down on post-it notes and leaving them by the computer, I figured she probably didn't use Tor. I closed it, opened up her regular browser and went to Facebook. She was logged in. She had unfriended everyone. Everyone, except Grandpa. And this is what creeps me out. There were posts on both her and Grandpa's timelines going back to the day she had unfriended everyone. Some posts were from his account, the rest from hers. They replied to each other. It looked like real conversations. Grandma would sometimes take minutes to reply, sometimes hours, but Grandpa's replies were all almost instantaneous. There were old pictures of them back when they were younger. From back before digital cameras even. I suppose it's possible Grandma might have learned how to scan photos, or paid someone to do it for her, but why would she fake conversations with her dead husband? I was starting to worry something was seriously wrong with Grandma. I took a few photos of the screen with my phone, then I went out into the kitchen. I joined the conversation for a little bit, then whispered to Mom and told her to go into the bedroom while I talked to Grandma. I kept her busy for around 20 minutes until Mom came back. She looked a little pale, so she must have found the whole thing as creepy as I did. But now what? We didn't know what to do. I sneaked back to Grandma's bedroom with the intention to turn her laptop off before she noticed we turned it on at all. But then I saw there was a new message waiting for her. From my grandpa. I opened the chat window, and it read, "Have Angie and Charlie already left? My mother's name is Angela, so Angie isn't that strange as a nickname, but nobody calls me Charlie except my grandparents. Charles is my middle name, and most people don't even know I have one. So I was a little bit disturbed that someone was calling me that when talking to my grandmother using her dead husband's account. I took a photo of that as well, then closed the browser and turned her laptop off. My mother and I said our goodbyes and left. Everything about my grandma's behavior seemed normal, and she was sad to see us go like always. But I know for a fact that it couldn't be her who had written that message, since she had been in the kitchen the whole time. This happened yesterday, and I have no idea what's going on. It feels wrong. I mean, I know something is clearly off, but I have no idea what it could be. How do I even look into this more? Do we just confront Grandma about this? I ordered a hitman for myself on the dark web. The dark web has always intrigued me. Up until a few days ago, I had only been on there to buy realistic dolls off-site some of my friends gave to me. But, one night I was bored. I decided to boot up my Tor browser and try and see what sort of shit I could find on the dark web. If you've ever been on the dark web, you'll know that you can't just search up red rooms, or hitman for hire, and get results. No, you have to find links to these websites first. Anyway, I spent a little while trying to find some links. Anything that I found though was either too tame for me, or the links didn't work. At this point, I was about ready to give up, and I wish I had. But, in one final attempt, I clicked on Reddit. I didn't think I would find anything. So, I just scrolled through hot for about half an hour before sorting by new. Then, I found it. 1. Simple text post titled, Slayer's Assassination and Life-Ruining Services. In the text box in the post was what seemed to be just a random assortment of numbers and letters. It took my tired brain a second to figure out what it was, but I realized pretty quickly. It was a link, presumably to a hitman website. So, I decided to paste the link into my dark web browser and what do you know, it worked. But, before I decided to go any further I figured I should go back to Op's profile to see if they have posted any other dark web links. However, when I went back to the post in question Op's profile was deleted. Weird. Anyway, I reopened my dark web tab and hopped onto the site. Up along the top of the website was its name, Slayer's Assassination and Life-Ruining Services, and next to it what looked to be a skull inside of a crosshair. I chuckled when I saw that. The site must be fake. Upon scrolling down however, I was not disappointed. There was a small box to the right of the text that just said place an order. Hell, I was even tempted to order it on someone just to see what would happen. Ironically, I actually have a half-decent job so I can afford to. Better not to risk it though, I thought to myself. I was about to close my computer and call it for a night when I heard a knock at the door. I live alone, so it was unusual to get visitors, especially so late at night. But, when I opened my door it was just my good buddy Mark, who also happened to be my plug. As I opened the door, he didn't hesitate to let himself in and shove a big baggie in my face. This, dude, if the best shit I've had in a minute, we gotta try some. I couldn't say no. Cut to a couple hours later, it's early morning and Mark and I are chilling on my couch, both blazed. He suddenly decides to get up, and I assume he's going to get some leftover pizza, but he walks over to my desk and computer. Slayer's Assassinations, are you gonna kill someone or something? He mutters, what? I reply, your computer dude, it's got some hacker shit on it. It's the dark web man, don't fuck with it. At this point I'm still on my couch, half asleep and not paying full attention. However, I sat up pretty fast when he said the words, hey man, let's order a hitman on you. I hopped up and walked over to my PC. Part of my brain was screaming no, what the fuck are you doing? But the majority of my brain was thinking about how funny it would be to order a hitman on myself. So I agree. I made him get out my chair though, because I didn't want him seeing what my credit card numbers were as I transferred some Bitcoin. At the end, after I wrote down all my personal details, like my address, age, and even a photo, I had to select what I wanted to happen to me. I just selected plain old assassination, as it was actually cheaper than some of the other things. I could have paid an extra couple of grand to be beaten before my death, but even my high brain didn't want to splash the cash too much. God, this is ridiculous. Anyway, I placed the order and then replied to a confirmation email, and boom. It was done. A couple of clicks and I had ordered myself on the dark web. Mark and I laughed about it for a while, but then he left about an hour later and I fell asleep not too long after. I woke up around 9 a.m., which meant I got at least 6 hours of sleep, even if it felt like I got 3. I got up and out of bed, threw on some track pants and a cotton shirt, yes, I sleep naked, and brewed myself a coffee before sitting down to play some games and just enjoy my Sunday. You can imagine how shocked I was when I saw that I had ordered my death the previous night. Even though I thought the site was bullshit I still felt a pit open up in my stomach. Even when I'm zooted I usually can make sensible decisions. I chuckled, not like I could remember it anyway, but I guess Mark's new shit really was good. I would assume a normal human being would do something else, but I was still kind of out of it from the night before so I just carried on with my day. I was a little more paranoid, sure, but as I said I just assumed it was bullshit. I even laughed at the email I got from the website, saying that their hitman has been dispatched and was on its way. It was like ordering a package of Amazon. I was tempted to email back and ask for some day delivery, but I didn't need to ask, because that's exactly what I got. I didn't see it arrive, but around the time I started to cook myself a shitty dinner I noticed a blacked out sedan parked on the other side of the road from my house. I didn't live in a rural area, but there is a lot of trees and bushes between each of the houses on my street, so I would be surprised if any other house saw the car except for mine. At this point, I was freaking out. What if the site was real? Even though I'm a big guy, I was freaking out. I don't own any weapons, aside from a slightly larger than average kitchen knife. Fuck it, I'm confronting it, I decided. I put on a hoodie and slid the knife into the front pocket before waltzing on out of my house and walking right up to the driver's side window of the vehicle. Even I was astonished at my own courage. Knocking on the window, nothing happened. It was rather anticlimactic. I was fully prepared to have to fight for my life, all because I did something really dumb while I was baked. But, like I said, nothing happened. I even put my head right up to the window, as if there was a reflection, to try and get a better look to see what's inside. I could barely see what was inside of the car, but all I could make out were 2 empty seats. No one was even inside. I had got all hyped up for nothing. I decided to wait out by the car for a bit, but after half an hour or so I was hungry and I had to go back inside to take my dinner out of the oven. I swear, it was only a minute between me going inside to take my dinner out of the oven and looking back out of the window, and the car being gone. I didn't even hear it go. Guess I'm eating my dinner with all my curtains closed and doors locked, I muttered to myself. I had just started to calm down when the power shut off. It was sunny outside, and coupled with the car I now knew that this was the real deal. I had signed my own death warrant. I ran into my upstairs bedroom and locked the door, and then hid under the bed. I couldn't call the cops. What would I say? Oh yes, hello sir. Turns out while super zooted I paid $5,000 for some anonymous hitman to kill me and now he's arrived. Send an officer please and thank you. So, I just stayed hiding under my bed, and I still am now. I've been here for an hour now writing this. Think of this as my epitaph. I know I'm screwed. Just a minute ago I heard my back door slowly creak open. This piece of writing may seem humorous to you, the reader, but in reality as you read this I'm under my bed praying to a God that lost all faith in me years ago to spare me, to let me go. But I know that won't happen. My bedroom door just opened and I can see a big pair of black boots. My dead ex-boyfriend is stalking me online. Edward and I dated for 6 months. He was an exceptional man in so many ways, but he soon revealed his horrible addiction to furries. Signaled by numerous red flags, I broke up with him. He couldn't accept that. His relentless pursuit began. The monstrous man had veiled his true evil for so many months. I think he'd been aching to free it. His vengeance was savage and unyielding. Threatening social media posts. Candid photos he'd taken of me. An emailed schedule of my family's movements. A restraining order did nothing to stop him. Nevertheless, after months of fear, the horrendous stalking came to a bitter end. In December, Edward tragically froze to death in his snow-covered, beaten-up, unheated Ford Mustang. He had been waiting outside my house for hours at the blistering height of winter. A neighbor found him in the morning, cards on the table. Edward wasn't even his real name, and I'm not exactly sure why I'm protecting his identity, given that he's dead. I guess I'm still scared of him. Understandable, given that even death hasn't halted his heinous hunt. Edward was a technological wizard. That was his true love. He called himself an innovator. Not a programmer, an artist. During the final month of our relationship, as I started to doubt the man's ethical compass, he became obsessed with the idea of the human soul. Artificial intelligence bored him. The future, he said, was a mesh of man and machine. Immortality. He believed he could upload the human consciousness to a computer. He didn't invent the concept, of course. Mind uploading is a well-documented hypothetical among scientists and philosophers alike. He's watched too many sci-fi films, I thought. But I suppose science fiction often becomes reality, doesn't it? Many people think it's impossible to upload the human consciousness to a computer, but I suppose they only think in terms of computing. Edward's research went beyond ordinary programming. He was ranting and raving about Greycode, an underground programming language of the occult. His eerie obsession didn't faze me, in all honesty. I would have endured the plight of the suffering artist, had he not struck me across the face on one particular evening. Abuse was the line. Edward apologized profusely, of course. But the longer I ignored him, the more violent his messages grew. After his death last month, I thought the torture would cease. It did, for a couple of weeks, but then awful things started happening. Nice sunset, Natasha, he said. That was his comment on a recent Instagram picture of me. My friends flooded my DMs, asking whether I thought Edward's account had been hacked. Obviously. What an asinine question. The man was dead. It had to be somebody's perverse prank, but I blocked Edward's account, which made the whole ordeal quite traumatizing for me. I thought somebody had bypassed Instagram security. That made me feel vulnerable. I contacted Instagram about it. They apologized, suspended his account, and I thought that was the end of it. The comments persisted, however. And it wasn't just happening on Instagram. It was happening on every one of my social accounts. I believed that somebody was tormenting me, maybe one of Edward's relatives who blamed me for his untimely death. I told the police, and they promised to conduct a thorough investigation. Yeah, right. I was a little shaken, but I wouldn't say I was scared. The cyber harassment had stirred some of the old trauma and fear, but I felt resilient. Nobody could scare me as much as Edward, and Edward was dead. I was convinced that it was some idiot with a vile vendetta. It was what happened a week ago that defied all rational explanation and filled me with fear unlike any I've ever experienced. One night, I was lying in bed, and a ping from my laptop startled me. It was open on my desk, less than a foot from the end of my bed. I certainly hadn't left it open. I hadn't left it switched on, for that matter, and I hadn't left it on Facebook. Who even uses Facebook anymore? The screen was scrolling by itself. Somebody's hacked my computer. That was my first thought. The mystery hacker was looking at Edward's profile. The scrolling stopped, and I found myself staring at an old photo of Edward and me at a party. It was from the early days of our relationship. We looked happy. I get it, Ryan, I murmured, assuming Edward's brother to be behind the torture. It's my fault that he's dead. And then something horrifying happened. The photo moved. To be more specific, Edward moved. I, like everything and everyone else in that picture, remained static. But Edward, suddenly untethered, strolled over to the photographer. He was engulfing every inch of the full screen photo. My dead ex-boyfriend was staring through the laptop screen. Staring at me. What the hell is this? I cried breathlessly. I wasn't even sure how it was possible to override Facebook in that way, but I still felt that everything was within the realm of possibility. It's Ryan. It has to be Ryan. That didn't explain how he doctored an old photograph to include a moving video of Edward. Deepfake technology? Hello, Natasha, Edward said. His voice was garbled, as if he were swirling in a blender. My chest tightened. Did Edward record himself to torture me from beyond the grave? I wondered. You look so beautiful, his inhuman voice gushed. I like your new hair. And the dog pajamas are adorable. I yelped quietly. It couldn't be a pre-recording. How would he have known that I'd changed my hairstyle? How could he have known about the new pajamas? Ryan. It has to be Ryan. He's watching me through my webcam, and then something happened which couldn't be attributed to Ryan. Edward's demeanor shifted. As had been the case in our 6-month relationship, he swiftly transitioned from a genial gentleman to a vehement villain. His pixelated head tilted to one side, as if he were simply ogling me from a fresh angle. His smile had only changed ever so slightly, but it was now brimming with malignancy. The dead man's charm was vanishing. So were his pupils, for that matter. Seconds later, all that remained were two white, soulless eyes. It felt as if I were seeing the real Edward at long last. The subhuman thing that lay dormant beneath his scintillating shell. A thunderous thudding sound sent a shockwave through my body. Horrified, I watched Edward's hands pressing against the screen of my laptop. As if he were trapped underwater, he continued to push against the surface of the pixelated pool. The screen continued to flex. I screamed in unbridled terror. I finally accepted that it wasn't Ryan. It wasn't anything that could be explained by earthly rhyme or reason. I wasn't going to wait for my undead abuser. Never again. I scarpered from my bed, beelining for the door of my room. Before I could flee, there was a blinding flash of light from my laptop screen. The door swung shut, and a piercing sound emitted from the speakers of my laptop. It sounded like a ghastly cry of agony. You're not leaving me again, Edward commanded. I rotated to face the digital entity that was slithering free from my laptop screen, which was stretching around him like elasticated rubber. When he finally escaped his digital prison, Edward's long limbs glitched ghoulishly before me. He adjusted his posture, standing upright and gazing upon me with white, empty eyes. My stalking specter widened his fiendish Cheshire cat grin. I found a way to live forever, he whispered. If you join me, I promise we won't ever fight again. I tirelessly battled to open my bedroom door, which was being held shut by an invisible force. Twisting my head to look at the monstrous creature behind me, I whimpered in horror. Edward slowly stumbled towards me on unsteady, glitching legs, toppling his head to one side. I screeched at the top of my lungs and turned back to face the door, desperately yanking the handle. That was when I had a dreadful idea. I darted towards my bedside table, swerving past Edward's outstretched arms. Picking up a half-full glass of water in one hand, I turned to face my ex-boyfriend. His lips parted, and a pit of blackness was revealed. That same high-pitched wail erupted from the caverns of his demonic body. He knew what I was about to do. Without a moment's thought, I launched the glass of water at the digital ghoul that was lumbering towards me. Edward screamed in a robotic cry so deafeningly loud that my ears popped. As the water soaked through his shimmering, translucent skin, he began to spasm manically. His unbound digital form retreated, and I watched the laptop screen reclaim him. My bedroom door swung open, so I assumed my undead stalker must simply have been too distracted to keep me trapped. I seized my opportunity and fled my flat. I've been living in my car for the past few days. This is the first time I've used technology since the incident. I'm currently in a computer cafe. There are plenty of people around, and I don't think Edward would come for me in a public place, but who knows? I just wanted to post here because I need help. I don't know where to go or what to do. I have nightmares of being imprisoned in Edward's eternal digital prison. I keep seeing flickering screens out of the corner of my eye. Should I get off the grid and avoid technology for the rest of my life? I can't run. He's everywhere.